and I was in the 95th percentile of having a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, and dying. Half of the people that have that first event of the kind of cardiovascular disease that I have die.
Jason, how did you find carnivore?
Well, Dave, I stair stepped into it. I had a kind of a health wake up call, and how do I say this politely? I was in my mid 60s, mid to late 60s, and I moved to a new area and went to a new doctor. And it was a young man right out of med school. And he says, "Yeah, you've got pre-diabetes. You're just borderline right on to full-blown diabetes." He says, "But there's nothing we can do about it. We'll just watch it." And I thought, "What do you mean we'll just watch it?" He says, "Yeah, there's nothing we can really do. We'll just keep an eye on it." And I got out of there. And, Dave, I thought, well, diabetes, that's lifelong, and that's forever, and I'm going to have my feet cut off, and I'm going to go blind, and I went through all the stuff that you do, and I thought, oh my goodness. So I dug into it. I was retired and I had time, and so I just dug into it. uh, I found out that he didn't have any idea of what he was talking about. So I went initially following Ivor Cummins' work and a number of others, but he was the dominant guy, and realized how wrong the doctors were about cardiovascular and diabetes and all these issues. So I went on a low carb, high fat diet. And I did that for a couple of years. Now, I had already recently, for reasons having nothing to do with my immediate health or health concerns, I actually went on zero sugar and zero processed food. And that was about, I'm getting old and I need to do what's right. So then when I found out about the diabetes, it, just scared the crap out of me. So I was perking along pretty good doing that. And I kept listening and learning because it was fascinating. And then I moved again. Now, the second time I moved, I went to a new doctor who was a great guy. He was older and spent time with me. And he, unlike most doctors, he wasn't trying to push me out. And he got all after me. Now, he really got hard on because of I was no longer taking my statins. I said, well, they make me feel bad, and kind of explained it to him. He said, well, you've got to do it. And I said, well, I'm not going to. He said, well, you have to. And he was really adamant about it. But he was trying to be nice, but he couldn't. And so he said, all right, here, I'll make you a deal. Tell you what, if I can prove to you that you need to do it, will you consider it? And I said, okay, I will. Sure. That's a fair enough deal. So we went about doing test after test after test, and it was all good until I got the CT scan. And then I thought, I'm yeah, high level stage 4. Stage 5 is, death knocking at the door. And I was in the 95th percentile of having a cardiovascular event, a heart attack, and dying. Half of the people that have that first event of the kind of cardiovascular disease that I have die. So I really dug into it further, and I kept learning more and more and more about inflammation, and everything that I read that was science-based, not religion-based, and I'm saying religion. I'm not talking about your 5 big religions, Buddhist, Christianity. I'm talking about the religion of vegetarianism. And yeah, I know. But I've come to believe that that is a religion, and there is no science or real science behind it. And I learned more and more that carnivore was the least inflammatory diet that I could do. Well, I jumped on that bandwagon about 3 years ago, and I've been almost strict. I say almost because I do drink coffee. That's my plant. That's my cheat, is coffee. But I drink coffee with butter in it. I eat a lot of eggs, but it's predominantly beef and pork, some chicken, but it's all carnivore. And I've been doing it for 3 years. Dave, I got to tell you that I feel great. Not just feel great for my age, which is advanced. I'm 75 years old. I feel great, period. I just feel great. I work out in the gym. And last time we spoke, I was just beginning to go to the gym, but not full time. And now I'm in the gym 5 days a week, at least an hour. And I'm right there with the young guys.
Right.
And I look forward to it every day now.
And so y you were in the 95th percentile.
Of having an event, yes, and the type of cardiovascular disease that I have, commonly called hardening of the arteries, um, the first symptom that 50% of the people have is death. Now, that was a motivator. You know,
And,
that got me going.
do you know how things are going at the moment?
Yeah, they're great. Yeah, yeah, they're great. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't recall, but I had a CT scan in June, and it was dramatically better. Yeah,
Okay, so it's not just stayed the same, it's got better.
yeah, it's getting better now. Yeah,
Right. Oh, wow. That's
not
awesome.
dramatically so, but when you dig into it, the thing is if you stabilize and stop growing with the disease that I have, and especially at the high level that I already am, it's the common process is that you grow by 30% per year per annum. And so if you just flatline, that's absolutely perfect. What that does, if you just flatline, you stop your growth. Period. So it's no more growth. That takes you within 1 year from the 95th percentile all the way down to the third percentile, even though the soft plaque and the hard plaque remains in the arteries. It's stabilized, and so I don't, unless your viewers are curious, I can explain why. But the basic thing is stabilization is the big deal. And yeah, once that happens, you're all the way back down as if you didn't have cardiovascular disease. When I say all the way back down, you're out of the danger. You're back down there with those guys that have those scores of under 100. You know, my score is just a hair's breadth away from 1,000.
Um, I mean, the fact you're in the gym is a good sign
Mhm.
because, that's the kind of place where you're gonna experience problems, right?
Yep. Yep. And I do both. I do a lot of heavy lifting and I also do cardio. I get on the bicycle and I'm standing up for 3 minutes, and I'm breaking a sweat. I'm breathing hard. Then I'll free pedal for I'm sorry, 1 minute, and then I free pedal for three. Then I'm up in the stirrups again for a minute, and then three, relax. And I do that 3 times. That's my warm up, and I am sweating up a storm and breathing hard, and I feel great. Yeah.
And, you're eating, as you described, but is that like 1 meal a day, 2 meals a day?
No, I eat when I'm hungry. Generally speaking, it's 3 meals. I'll usually have an omelet with maybe some hard cheese on it for breakfast and coffee. I'll have maybe a little bit of yogurt for lunch, just a small serving, and then I'll have a large steak or pork ribs, or because I'm in the Philippines, we get a lot of pork belly, which is really delicious and high fat, so I get a lot of that. So I'll have a larger meal, usually around the kind of the normal dinner time. Um, so I did intermittent fasting for a couple of years, and yeah, just kind of got out of it. Actually, the more I moved into carnivore, the less intermittent fasting I've done, and even the less long-term fasting. Back before I got into carnivore, I did 10 months in a row where I did 5-day fasts at the beginning of each month, and then to top it all off, on the 11th month, I did a 23-day fast. But I haven't done that since I actually started carnivore.
Wow. Um, and being in the Philippines, do you get kind of funny looks that you're never eating rice?
No, there's quite a few, we call them foreigners, expats here. So yeah, no, I don't. Now, I'm engaged, and my fiance and I are looking for property, which, if we buy property, probably a homestead style farm, it'll be out quite a ways away from the big city. And I'm in Dumaguete, which is a modest tier 2 city here, and there's quite a few retirees. Guys like me with gray hair. Well, where we're moving to, uh, I'll be the only guy there, so I'll get unusual looks. But it's an extremely friendly place, so I don't think there'll be a problem.
Oh, nice. Um, so, is your fiance been interested in this at all?
Yeah, when we first got together, she was interested in losing weight. She was 15 pounds, about 15, 10 to 15 pounds overweight, or what she thought was overweight. And so she joined me in the carnivore. She did that for about, I guess, 4 or 5 months. And then she said, okay, that's good. She's lost the weight and she wanted to go back. And she missed a lot of the foods. Now, what's really special about her in this situation, she's doing keto now. So she's keto and healthy keto. She's really good about it. But she stopped eating all rice. And when you're in the Philippines, they have a saying here, rice is life. And she tricks her friends. She had a big party here a while back, and they were her high school friends. So they're having this big reunion, and they were here at the house. And so they'd all said, "Oh my goodness, how can you not eat rice? You're going to have hallucinations." This is the common conversation. You'll go into hallucinating, and you'll faint, and all of this stuff. So she made this beautiful spread, and had uh, cooked dried fish. And if there's any Filipinos out there, please forgive me. It's the most god awful smelling thing you'll ever want. I was gone. I had to leave. But they're in there and they're having this cooked fried dried fish and all the wonderful stuff that they grew up on and they love. And so she, on purpose, didn't put the rice on the table. And the table's full of food, so it wasn't like there was blank spots. And they ate all of this dried fish. And then she commented, "You realize you guys ate this dried fish," which is always, I mean, it's absolute a must do to marry that with rice. Without eating rice, and they all fell out. They couldn't believe it. But so yeah, she's gone keto. She tried carnivore for a while and did that. She's a little bit younger than me, and she's very healthy already. So she doesn't have the struggles that I did.
Yeah. So, when you think about it, you're 75, you're
Hmm.
going to the gym regularly, you're looking for a new place and all this kind of thing. You're very active. Like, this is not the typical 75-year-old thing still, right?
Nope.
And certainly, like, when I was a kid, someone who was 75, like, you didn't really see them active at all, you know?
Well, and like I said, there's quite a few foreigners here who are my age. And I've got to tell you, Dave, um, they don't move the way I move. Now, unfortunately, there's quite a few guys that drink too much, but you'll see them out there at 9 o'clock in the morning, big bellies hanging out and bad health. And I've learned what to look for, and they've got the skin tags on the neck and the creases there, and their ankles are discolored, and those are all real clear signs of diabetes. And they're still eating French fries and rice and all the high carb foods, and of course a lot of beer, which is high carb, and they don't move. Now, I'm even more active than what I've told you. Yeah, we're doing this, and we right now we have, what do we have? 12 goats and 4 cows and about 100 chickens, and I'm doing 2 YouTube channels and doing research. I've been doing an active research in my arena for the last 3 years. So yeah, I work at least an 8 hour day every day. Well, excuse me, that's not true. At least an 8 hour day, 5 days a week. I take Saturdays and Sundays off, and we go down to the beach. We go snorkeling. We have barbecue. Yeah. So yeah, I can't tell you how grateful I am to be this age, this engaged, and this healthy, and have this much energy, and without putting too much shine on it, because this is the carnivore kind of a thing. But quite frankly, in my heart, I know that carnivore is largely because of this. Of course, it's my personality, it's who I am and all that, but I didn't feel this good 10 years ago. And there was a time when I bought an off-grid cabin in 2018, and I went up there. I was recently divorced and went up there and was rebuilding the cabin all by myself and doing all that work. I felt pretty good, but I didn't feel as good then as I do now. I've got more energy now.
So one of the most interesting things for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, was throughout my whole life, I was always like, whatever I was addicted to at the time, could have been cigarettes, could have been alcohol, whatever, but especially about food, was always like, I know I should eat better. I don't think I'm eating well, but what would life be like if I just gave this up? It would be so boring. And
Yeah.
what you don't realize until you do it is there's this huge perspective shift once you start eating real food, real nutrient dense food.
Mm-hmm.
And that perspective shift is like, I never needed that stuff. I just my body was crying out for something I wasn't giving it, and that's why I thought I needed this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. Um, I was a smoker in my young years, and then I was never a heavy drinker, but I was a consistent drinker. And in the last few years leading up to my going carnivore, um, I was drinking 2 glasses of wine, and the hesitation there. Sometimes it was only one, almost always it was two, and occasionally it was 2.5 to 3. But that was night after night after night after night after night. Did I say after night? It was chronic. And that was my time to relax and to take it easy. And I kind of owed it to myself. And I had no idea of how lethargic I was. Wake up in the morning, I was just a little bit off, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it. And when I continued doing that while I was on the high fat, low carb diet, but when I went on carnivore, I stopped all of that. Anything that wasn't carnivore other than coffee, I just cut it out. Wow, what a change. So it was for me, yeah, there was an emotional component was this is my relaxing. I've worked hard all day. I want this. Whether I was working on the job or rebuilding the cabin, whatever it was. Uh, and my goodness, yeah, I missed it for about a week. I'm exaggerating, I kind of missed the whole the getting the wine, opening the wine, pouring the glass, settling into my chair, all that stuff, the rituals. I missed that more than the wine. Um, but I got over it. It took just a few weeks and those rituals went away. I got to feeling so much better so quickly.
And yeah, once you're eating that steak every day and the eggs and
Mhm.
that kind of thing, it's just everything starts to quickly become a distant memory, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm.
Today I have no desire for. We go out to a party or we have say a dinner here with 4 or 5 couples, and it, every time somebody will bring a bottle of wine over, and I don't even want it. The big thing, if I may, is the the progress of changing, going from when I was eating some carbs to eating no carbs, and at first. Uh, I wanted those carbs. And if I'd walk by, let's say, the donuts in, even if they're packaged, but say, especially if they're cooking donuts in a department store or a large grocery store, sometimes they have that there. And it would just, I felt like a fish on the hook, just being pulled in. And it was a fight. Dave, it took a few years, but over time, it got to where I could look at those and I didn't want them anymore. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, I look at a box of donuts and I literally at a visceral level am repulsed. I see poison. So I physically go, ugh. It's not like I'm telling myself, it's there's this not emotional, but physical response of that's going to kill me. I
Yeah.
don't want it.
I think it's a little. I look at this as kind of like an ex-girlfriend thing. So it's like when you're in high school and the girlfriend breaks up with you, and like
Hmm.
your world is like comes crashing down around you. And think, how am I going to live anymore without this girlfriend? And that's you first
Hmm.
giving up the donuts, right?
Hmm.
And then after a period of time, when you've been without your girlfriend and you're kind of over it, and then you see her again and you look at her and you think, what did I ever see in you?
Yeah.
I've
Why?
got no emotional connection anymore.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's what it's like. And it just takes time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then you're over it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. Right. And that's a great analogy. Now, for the viewers who are women, just change the gender. Back in the day, it was with that guy who was Mr. Hot, and you just thought you were going to die if you did. Same thing. It works for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, it's like, there's nothing that you can't get over. It just takes time. And that goes for, I mean, as you talked about alcohol as well, you can get into such a routine with alcohol,
Hmm.
and it becomes, it's not even the alcohol, as you say, it's not even the alcohol you need,
Right.
it's the habit of
Right.
doing it, it's the feeling of relaxation, it's the
Hmm.
sound of opening that wine bottle, it's all those
Hmm.
things.
Hmm. It's the
And
ritual.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
There's so many
just
rituals that
takes
go along with
time.
it. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
The
Yeah. So we get addicted to the behaviors.
mm, yeah. So, for you, like you're so busy, like even when you talked about your weekend, I mean, even that sounds like you're keeping busy, going snorkeling, doing all these things, right? You
Yeah.
mentioned you're running 2 channels as well. What are
Yes, I
those
am.
channels related to carnivore or anything like that?
They're not directly related to carnivore at all. However, one of the channels absolutely applies, not because of the diet. In fact, I shy away from any dietary conversation. But I'm an expert on obesity. Now, I know that's a big claim, but I actually am. And I started in 1979. Anything with a 19 in front of it's a long time ago. So I started in 1979 doing a medical, yeah, exactly. We're old, or I'm old. A medical anthropology, emphasis on anthropology, a field study in Northern California, looking at the continuity of diet generationally to see why people were obese. None of those things that was in the literature had any connection to the broader population. That would be diet and exercise and those kinds of things. So I got intrigued. Now, at the time, I had never really been overweight, but over the years, while under more and more and more stress, work stress, marital stress, the things, I gradually went all the way up to obesity and then fought it down and got it back down and then stayed. I yo yoed from maybe 20 pounds to 40 pounds overweight a couple of times, just up and down. And then later on, in my mid 50s, got back up to obesity again and fought it back down. Now, all along this is going on, I knew because of my research that the emotional eating was in the brain. Now, at the time, I thought it was psychological. Now, that was the one thing that tracked with 100% of the people who I had interviewed. And by the time I was in my 60s, I'd interviewed over 1,000 people. And I wrote a book on it, and I've tried to I did a clinical study with cognitive behavior therapy, and it did not work. It was an abysmal failure. 6 years later, I did another clinical trial, this time using EFT, emotional freedom technique, and it's based in the meridian system with tapping, for those of you who are not familiar with it, and the Eastern type medicine. Well, it was an abysmal failure. Now, I wrote 2 books. preceding each of those clinical trials. I was all excited. I figured it out, right? Wrote the book, published the book, and then followed up with a clinical trial. And so I beg anybody, please don't go find those books because they're full of wrong information. It didn't work. And so I put it up. That was in 2006, 2007, that last clinical trial, and I gave it up. In 2021, I learned about a procedure called havening, and it stimulates brain waves, which then in turn depotentiate permanently potentiated neural pathways in the amygdala. Okay, what does that really mean? That means you have either developed during childhood or under high stress, like PTSD situations. You create these pathways in a very specific part of the brain. That's think of it like a road or a highway. It's potentiated pathway, but it's a highway. It's in your brain, and it's permanent. It'll be there. You talk to people at the VA, for example, and they've got guys that came out of the Vietnam War still having PTSD because all of the talk therapy in the world won't touch it. And the reason why is that part of the brain, the amygdala, is your sentry. It's the sentry out in front of the guard post. And it does not understand language. Doesn't matter what language. So you can be in talk therapy for 50 years, and all you've done is just spent a lot of money and made yourself very, very unhappy doing it, because the talk therapy has you reliving it over and over and over and over and over. And that's miserable if it's something that created PTSD. So when I dove into the science of havening, I realized, hey, this is most likely what I've been looking for out of childhood patterning, and then did the research on that. And yeah, so now how does that apply to us? Well, as I'm sure you know, most of the people on your channel are here and they're telling their story of how they just are miraculously healthier. That's the people who are drawn to you. But if you go to other channels, like there are thousands of people out there who are on carnivore to lose weight. That's their jam. They're trying to lose weight, and it's the best thing going. It's better than keto. It's better than Ozempic will do it, but Ozempic is $1,000 a month and really, really bad for you. There's more and more research coming out about how bad that is. But carnivore, you can go on carnivore and lose 100, 150 pounds. The problem is, you go on carnivore, you might as well go on carnivore or on keto or on vegan. And people lose weight on every conceivable possible diet. But whether you're on carnivore or keto, gradually you start overeating. The satiation, you override it. It's an override. See, people who are obese, and I mean this in the medical sense, not as a derogatory comment, they know they're full. This isn't news to them. They know they're full. They're, oh my God, I can't believe I can't eat another bite, but I'm still hungry. No, there's something still driving them, that urge. I call it the food monster, that urge to go and nibble on something or have the last 2 or 3 French fries off of your friend's plate. That has nothing to do with satiety. That has to do with this highway in your brain that says, there's some stress in my life, which that part of the brain says, uh-oh, danger. I got to take you to a place of safety. And in those people's brain structure, safety is eating. I'm safe while I'm eating. So I've developed the process for that. The thing is, with the carnivore, most people lose weight very, very quickly because at the beginning, you're so satisfied, especially if you've been having a heavy carb. We won't go into the science, but the carb gives you a very temporary satiety at the brain level, not at the stomach level, but the brain level. And that goes away in an hour. And so you're back to hungry. And you've been doing this for the last 25, 30, 35 years. And so hey, I'm still going to be hungry. So the satiety of the high-fat diet makes you feel great and you lose the weight. But that wears off because this urge that is hardwired, it has nothing to do with psychology. It's a physicalness. Think of your mind as your character and who you are, your belief systems, and your brain as a physical organ. And it's the brain that's doing this, not your character. The last thing a lot of obese people are is lazy. My goodness, I've seen them work like dogs to lose the weight. Carnivore is easy. So that's where it applies. So that's one of the deals. And so I've got a YouTube channel up. I've done the research. I'm wrapping up on the research now, and I'm working in conjunction with several other people on getting the scientific papers written up and all that kind of stuff. And the book is coming out too.
That's really cool. So on your channel, are you like just presenting this kind of information, or are you
Yes.
interviewing people that have done this? Or
So far, it's been just presenting like a teacher would. I'm presenting the information, what it's all about, why you have these urges when you know you're full, what's going on in the brain, what's happening, why it's not your fault. You know, you've been beat up for being overweight or obese all your life, but why it's not your fault. Those are the kinds of things I've been doing. And by the way, if anybody here goes on my site over the course of the next week, I'm taking down all 24 of the videos and putting them back up, which means all of them are going to look like I've had no views, nobody's watching, nobody's looking. I'm doing that because the lawyers have told me, you're saying some things that you could get sued for. I'm using the term heal. I can't say, well, heal your food monster. I've got to say, well, resolve the pathway, because, that's just the way it is. And I didn't know these things 6 months ago when I put up the channel. So,
right, yeah. Um, so in the position you're in now, like there's
mhm,
no going back for you. Like there's no going back to a regular diet.
never, never.
Um, so if you talked about some of the people that live around you. Let's say one of them came to you and said, "Okay, Jason, I'm ready to give this a try as well. I want to feel a bit better." Um, how would you recommend they start with carnivore?
Well, I would recommend that they back out of their favorite carbs first. Don't go full carnivore. There's just psychologically, stop eating your French fries, stop eating those things, and realize that your life will be okay. Do that for a week, maybe two, and I would talk to them about it. Not an actual doctor kind of a interview, but I would just talk to them. What are the, do you like French fries? The obviously. How about cake? And so let's try it. Let's just prove to each other, and I'll meet you for lunch every day for the next week, and that you can live without the French fries. And so we do that. And then when they've proven to themselves they can be successful, then I would say, okay, let's start easing in. What are your favorite meats? What do you like the most? And we'll kind of do a shifting where one comes up and the other one goes down. And over the course of the next 10 days, 2 weeks, we would move you into a full carnivore with permission to eat some vegetables that you like. Above ground, low carb vegetables with permission, drenched in butter. Let's make it good. Let's make it a fun journey and do that. Now, I didn't do that. I went cold turkey, but I was extremely motivated. I wasn't just, hey, Jason, let's give this a shot. What do you think? I'd like to feel a little better. No, I was scared to death of death. So, yeah, I'd ease them into it. Maybe take 2 weeks, maybe three to kind of prove that they could do it. Um, and I didn't experience this, but enough people have talked about it that I know it's real. The keto flu, and uh, that whole thing where you kind of feel like, my bones ache and what have you. So, kind of ease them through that and talk them through it. Explain, and I would also, one thing I would absolutely do is send them to channels like this one, because there's so many people with so many great stories that would be helpful for them. And I talk to them about it. Don't just go look, but go look. I'll watch it with you or rewatch it, and let's talk about it tomorrow at lunch. I would give them that kind of emotional support. Um, the physical part it can be important, especially if you have like the keto flu, but really the emotional support is key.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think it's really important because you kind of you're on your own, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing this, like no one else around you understands what you're doing or anything, so you're on your own. So having someone you can talk to
Mm-hmm.
is really helpful.
One of the things I've been surprised about is when I go to a restaurant here in the Philippines or wherever, and I say, oh, no, I'll have the hamburger, but no bread, no lettuce, no tomato, just the patties. And they'll look at me funny. Say, well, I've got a heart condition. I need to. It's a medical diet. I only eat meat. They go, okay, well, everybody's got their diet. People just kind of accept that these days. The vegans and the vegetarians have plowed that field for us, so we're not, we're seen strange, but not as weird as we could have been.
Yeah, that's true. We
So
just
it's
gotta
been
get
pretty
it
easy.
onto airlines now. That's the issue, is to have a carnivore
Good
meal on
luck.
an airline. It's yeah.
Yeah, good luck
Um,
with that.
y
Yeah.
yeah. So, Jason, if people wanna check out your YouTube channel, how can they find you there?
Well, this food monster freedom, as I said, the food monster is that chatter, that wah 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 that drives you. So, and people who are overweight, they go, oh yeah, I know that's my monster, right? So that's the food monster, and it's food monster freedom, and so that's the name of the YouTube channel, and it's also foodmonsterfreedom.com. That's the website. So yeah, they can learn more about
Awesome.
that. Yeah.
Excellent. I'll link to both of those in the show notes.
Mhm.
Jason, thanks for coming back on,
Oh,
and,
you're so welcome. Thanks for having
it's
me.
yeah, fantastic to see you doing so well. It's great.
Yeah, life is great. Life is grand. I'm having a lot of fun. Underline all of that, it's easy to say, oh, I'm having a lot of fun, but one of the things that really, really, really makes it just great is that I can believe, because of how I feel, that this is going to continue. I'm not looking at next year, I'm going to fall off a cliff. This feels sustainable, and it feels doable, and it feels real.